This map shows China, but here's an interesting secret. Just a few hundred kilometers away, in South Korea, one of the largest US military bases outside its own territory is located. And it's not just one base. The US is like a main player in South Korea, turning the entire region into a military camp. Air, naval, and ground bases, everywhere. Official statistics say the US currently has 73 active military bases in South Korea. Now let's move east of China, where Japan, like a chain of islands, controls the entrance to the East China Sea from the Pacific Ocean. Japan hosts an astonishing number of American bases, about 120. Yes, you heard that right. Japan has almost become the US command center in East Asia. Further south, in the Philippines, there are 9 more bases, right along the sensitive route of the South China Sea. So far, we've only seen US allies surrounding China, each giving the US bases one by one. But if we look higher, we realize the US has covered almost the entire Pacific Ocean with its bases. On the other side, to the west, in the Indian Ocean region, the US is reaching out to India with agreements and security cooperation like the Quad Alliance, aimed at balancing China's rising power. In this area lies the strategic Malacca Strait, where 2/3 of China's foreign trade passes through. This is exactly where the US wants to control China's economic lifeline. So let's get to the point. All these bases, agreements, and military presences have one clear goal: to surround and contain China. This precise project is called the Island Chain Strategy. According to this map, the US has deployed its forces in 3 defensive rings across the Pacific Ocean. The first ring, or first island chain, starts from the Kuril Islands north of Japan, passes through Ryukyu, skirts Taiwan, crosses northern Philippines, and reaches Borneo. The key point is, most of these areas lie in waters China claims sovereignty over. So, the US hasn't just built bases around China, it has military presence right in the disputed zones. According to the Pentagon's official definition, if a military base is larger than 10 acres, hosts over 200 soldiers, and is worth more than $10 million, it's called a major base. Bases smaller than this standard are called lily pads, or small-scale bases. Only in Japan, out of those 120 American bases, 86 are major bases. And in total, more than 53,000 US troops are stationed in Japan, the largest US military presence in any foreign country. Not all US bases in Japan are large, but interestingly, most of them are located on the small island of Okinawa, which makes up only 0.6% of Japan's land area. The US has stationed its advanced warships on this island, ready to counter China. The largest US naval base in Japan is Yokosuka, actually the biggest US naval base in the entire world. This port can accommodate 60 to 70 ships and even has a ship repair facility. It played an important role during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Since 1973, there has always been a US aircraft carrier based here. Currently, the USS George Washington has replaced the USS Ronald Reagan. The largest US air base is also in Okinawa Prefecture, the Kadena Air Base, which is close to the East China Sea, where China and Japan dispute the Senkaku Islands. The heavy militarization of this region has caused significant troubles for the local population. One of the main goals of the first island chain is to support Taiwan. China considers Taiwan part of its territory, but the US, through a policy called strategic ambiguity, on one hand recognizes a unified China, and on the other hand, continues to send weapons to Taiwan. The largest US ground base in Japan is Camp Zama, about 40 kilometers from Tokyo, housing around 2,000 American troops. In Taiwan, the US does not have a military presence, but weapons deliveries continue. Next, we come to the Philippines, a country on the eastern edge of the South China Sea, a region disputed by China, Taiwan, the Philippines, and several other countries. China claims the entire sea based on the famous 9-dash line. For this reason, the US has set up 9 temporary bases in the Philippines to be ready for any potential conflict. The importance of this area is not only political but also economic. Billions of dollars worth of trade pass through these waters. To counter China's claims, the US maintains its naval fleet in the region. Currently, the USS Carl Vinson is deployed in the Philippine Sea, right near this sensitive area. Alright friends, the US is always conducting freedom of navigation operations. This means that whenever China claims ownership of islands in the South China Sea, the US sends its ships and naval vessels there to show that these waters are free and not just China's. These comings and goings cause the Chinese and US navies to frequently see each other and sometimes even clash in those waters. Now, let's talk about the second island chain. It starts from Japan's Bonin Islands and extends to Guam and even western New Guinea. Guam, which is a US territory, hosts a lot of military bases. Believe it or not, there are 54 bases packed into a small area. That's about one base every 10 kilometers. The third chain starts from the Midway Islands in Hawaii and stretches all the way to Fiji and New Zealand. There's the famous Pearl Harbor Naval Base there, the largest US naval base in the Pacific Ocean. This is where Japan attacked in World War II, causing the US to enter the war. It's full of advanced warships and nuclear submarines. With these 3 island chains, the US protects itself but can also launch a quick strike if needed. As China gets stronger, the US has rapidly increased its bases. In South Korea, the number of bases has grown from just 2 after World War II to 73 now. In Japan, the bases have increased from 53 to 120. This island chain strategy was first designed in the 1950s to contain the Soviet Union and Communist China, but during the Cold War it wasn't heavily emphasized. After the Soviet Union collapsed and China rose fast, the US refocused on it. For the US, this is a way to show power and keep China in check. But for China, it's like a cage restricting its freedom in the Pacific. So China is trying to break free with its Belt and Road Initiative, expanding its influence in South and Southeast Asia. The US has changed the game too, expanding its Asia-Pacific strategy to the Indo-Pacific and partnering with countries along the Indian Ocean. One of these partnerships is the Quad Alliance, Japan, the US, India, and Australia working together to keep the Indo-Pacific region free and secure. So, that's the story of the island chain strategy and America's plan to contain China in the Pacific. Now, we have to see how China can break out of this blockade and what its response will be. In the world of politics and power, nothing is permanent, and this game is far from over. If you want to learn more about this topic and get the inside scoop on power struggles, make sure to follow the channel and share your thoughts with me. Until the next video, take care of yourself.